Commander Zara Chen had been aboard the Galactic Trade Consortium vessel Prosperity for 3 standard cycles, but she still couldn't understand the waste. Every time they passed a derelict ship floating in the void, every time they encountered debris fields from old battles, the alien crew would simply navigate around them and continue on their predetermined course. Today was different. Today, she finally asked. The bridge fell silent when her question hung in the recycled air. Captain Vorthak, a towering Zeltharian with crystalline skin that reflected the bridge's blue lighting, shifted uncomfortably in his command chair. His 6 arms moved in what Zara had learned was a nervous gesture among his species. First Officer. Quell, a gelatinous hydrian whose translucent body rippled with bioluminescent patterns, dimmed noticeably. "Why do you never salvage?" Zara repeated, her voice carrying the weight of months of suppressed curiosity. The navigation officer, a insectoid, Crick's name Tictor, actually stopped his constant chittering and turned all 4 of his compound eyes away from her. The communications array operator, whose species Zara still couldn't pronounce, seemed to find sudden interest in routine maintenance procedures. Captain Vorthak's primary arms gestured toward the main view screen, where the twisted remains of what appeared to be a cargo hauler drifted against the star field. "That vessel is dead, Human Chen. We do not disturb the dead, but it's just metal and components," Zara pressed, stepping closer to the captain's elevated platform. "That ship probably has functioning life support systems, power cores, maybe even intact navigation computers. On Earth, we'd strip that hull down to its molecular components and build 3 new ships from the materials." A collective shudder ran through the bridge crew. Quell's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what Zara had come to recognize as distress. "Your species," the first officer's translated voice was barely above a whisper. "Your species disturbs the resting places of the fallen?" "We call it recycling," Zara said, confusion evident in her tone. "Waste not, want not. It's one of our oldest principles." Captain, Vorthak's crystalline features somehow managed to convey horror despite their rigid structure. "The Zeltharian Codex strictly forbids disturbing vessels that have ceased to function. To do so would be to invite the wrath of the machine spirits." "Machine spirits?" Zara's eyebrows rose. Tictor's chittering resumed, but at a much higher pitch. "All vessels develop consciousness during their service," he explained without looking at her. "When they die, their spirits must be allowed to rest. To tear apart their physical forms would be," he searched for the proper translation, "an abomination." Zara looked around the bridge, taking in the faces of beings from 7 different star systems, all unified in their obvious discomfort with her question. She had known that humans were considered unusual among the galactic community, but this was something else entirely. "How long has this been standard practice?" she asked quietly. "Since the first civilizations achieved spaceflight," Quell replied, his patterns now shifting to deep purples and blacks. "It is universal law, encoded in the DNA of every spacefaring species, except..." He trailed off. "Except humans," Zara finished. The silence stretched until it became oppressive. Finally, Captain Vorthak spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority and ancient tradition. "The Galactic Council has debated what to do about your species' practices for many cycles. Some call for intervention, others suggest quarantine." "And what do you call for?" Zara asked, her military training keeping her voice steady despite the implications of his words. Vorthak's 6 arms moved in a complex pattern that Zara couldn't interpret. I call for understanding. Your species has survived in the void for barely 2 centuries, yet you have expanded farther and faster than civilizations that have existed for millennia. Perhaps, he paused as if the words were difficult to form. Perhaps the machine spirits approve of your recycling. The idea hung in the air like a blasphemy. Communications Officer Zilf finally spoke, his translated voice crackling through the bridge. Speakers. The humans have no derelict ships older than 50 of their years. None. Every vessel that ceases to function is consumed and reborn as something new. Because we don't waste anything, Zara said, beginning to understand the magnitude of what she had stumbled into. Every bolt, every wire, every computer chip gets reused. Nothing stays dead because we turn it into something living. Tictor's compound eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Your species practices technological resurrection. We practice common sense, Zara countered, but she was starting to see how it might appear to beings who viewed ships as living entities. Captain Vorthak stood slowly, his crystalline form catching and refracting the bridge lighting. Commander Chen, I must ask you something, and I require complete honesty. Of course. When you salvage these vessels, when you tear them apart and rebuild them, do you ever hear them scream? The question hit Zara like a physical blow. She stared at the captain, trying to process what he was asking. Around the bridge, every being seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for her answer. No, she said finally. We hear them sing. The collective gasp from the bridge crew was audible, even through their various translation devices. Sing? Quell whispered. Zara nodded, memories flooding back of her childhood in the Luna shipyards where her father had worked as a salvage engineer. When we cut into dead hulls, when we strip away the damaged sections and rebuild them into something new, the metal resonates. It makes music. We call it the Song of Renewal. She looked around the bridge, seeing wonder replacing horror in their alien faces. My father used to say that ships want to fly again, that they're grateful when we give them new life instead of leaving them to drift forever in the cold and dark. Captain. Vorthak's 6 arms moved in a completely different pattern now, one that Zara's translation implant identified as profound respect mixed with fear. Commander Chen, he said formally, I believe your species may be the first to discover that the machine spirits do not die. They simply wait for resurrection. Outside the viewports, the derelict cargo hauler continued its eternal drift among the stars, no longer a grave to be respected, but a song waiting to be sung again. For the first time in galactic history, a consortium vessel changed course to approach a derelict. The salvage operation would take 6 hours. The song would last forever.